Okay, so hi everybody, how are you? So this is a great time to have this conversation with Brandon because we just had an entire panel of people talking about devices for high performance. And so what we're going to do now is give you a little bit of insight into the mind of a high performer. So Brandon, can you share, so you're a high performer and you've also been very open about the things that you faced in your own life. Just to get started, can you share a little bit about what it's like to be a high performer? Is it really like to play professional football?
Yeah, it's not fun. The reason why I say that because the demand on your body physically and mentally, I really can't explain. Some of you guys in here may understand that because you guys are high performers in your businesses. But you have to be in the zone every single day. If you want to be successful, if you want to reach amazing heights, you have to win the day. There's no day where you can walk in and think that it's just going to happen for you. So I have found that it's been extremely stressful at times and extremely volatile at times to stay right there. But at the same time, you have this reward waiting for you at the end of the week. Every Sunday, I get an opportunity to reap what I've sowed all week. So it's worth it for me. There's not a better feeling in the world when I go out there and I've used Striver all week. That's a company actually in a device that the New York Jets have adopted the last 2 years. But when you put that on and you're able to see, okay, it's cover 2, and when this guy is shifted off the hash mark 2 yards, he's probably going to drop down and rotate to cover 3. These are all football terms, but I say that because when you can get that edge in a split second, when I can see 3 guys shifting or leaning on their right leg, and it's a tendency that is telling me that this is what they're going to do, and you capitalize off that moment, it's special. But you would think that it's every single play. I get an opportunity every single Sunday to go out there probably 70 times. That's how many plays we get. And you would think that every single time you go out there, you're going to take advantage of that moment. But that's not the truth. It comes down to 1 or 2 plays. You put all this time into your preparation all week, and on Sunday it comes down to 1 or 2 plays. You know, that tendency, that time you spent in virtual reality world trying to pay attention to the DB's, tendencies, whether with his arms or his legs, and then you see it and you catch that ball and it's a touchdown and your team wins, not a better feeling.
Right. So what are some of the things that you do daily to prepare mentally and physically for your high performance role?
It's interesting. Last year I probably had my best year ever, and I'm getting older, and that's usually when you get better as you get older, they're like, man, what kind of drugs are you on, right? But the drug that I'm taking is a mental drug. You know, we spend so much time, we spend 80% of our time focused on the physical when the game is 80% mental, and it makes no sense to me. And I figured this out a couple years ago, so I spend a lot more time focusing on my emotions, focusing on my mental edge, my mental toughness, just that type of preparation. And when I walk onto the field, I know that I'm 10 steps ahead of my opponent, whether it's the defense or the defensive back. So I spend a lot of time there.
And I know you meditate. Would you share just a little bit about your practice?
Correct. So meditation. So in 2010, and Nicole brought that up earlier, I was going through a really tough time. I actually was diagnosed with borderline personality disorder in 2011, and the best way I can describe that is an emotional disorder. And before I got the diagnosis, before I was even willing to get help or be in a position to listen, I started this thing called yoga. And through that time, we would end with this thing called gazing. And I didn't know it at the time, but that really got me through that tough year. It helped me maintain. So now I practice gazing, I practice noting, not as much, and I practice mindfulness almost every single day. And it's pretty cool because I'll be in the game on a Sunday, 70,000 cheering fans, we have a TV timeout, and I'm meditating because I have realized that it's all about being able to control your emotions, but also be present to reach where you're trying to go, and that's dominate. So, you know, I practice that all the time, and I find that it helps me with my concentration, and it also helps me with being present. And being present, that's where you're most powerful.
Yeah, I agree completely. And that's actually also a good transition. One of the things that we know is that high performers often also have challenges dealing with stress, anxiety, and even depression. So for example, here in the Valley, there's a lot of focus that's starting to happen on tech founder depression, tech founder anxiety. You also see it in the medical community. Physicians have higher levels of depression than normal population. And then certainly it's something that you've been very open with about your own journey there. So could you share a little bit with everyone about the work that you're doing with Project 375 and sort of how high performers can address that inner journey?
Yeah, so Project 375 is a nonprofit that I founded with my wife. I spent 3 months in an outpatient program at McLean Hospital, the #2 psychiatric hospital in the world. It's right there in Boston. And it was there that I learned my purpose. You know, you see a lot of times athletes struggle when the game is taken away from them, or if after they retire. And it was there that I learned that it was my purpose on this planet to help bridge the gap in the mental health community. So we founded this project, and we do two things. One's tangible, one's intangible. The intangible is the awareness side. We want to raise awareness because where we're at today is where the HIV and the cancer community was 20, 25 years ago. And what they're doing and what they've done to make a huge impact was, number one, they changed the narrative in the media, they changed the conversation, they made it a conversation, but they galvanized everyone. You know, they look at the cancer community, it's made up of 36 million Americans that suffer from it or affected by it. But the mental health community, there's over 100 million Americans that are affected by some type of illness or disorder. And for every one of us affected, 6 to 8 are also touched by it, whether it's a loved one, a friend, or a colleague. So it's a really important time for us, and it's a time that I think is really going to propel us to something great. So when you look at this space that we're in now, whether it's, and I love how you always put it, but you know, on one side it's it's impairment, and on the other side it's human performance, and then in the middle it's the human condition. Well, there's really no boundary when you look at that, you know, when you look at the mind and the brain. And, you know, it's interesting if I can paint a picture of my life, here I am, this macho, big football player, and I have this impairment, I have this disorder, and I had to go to counseling. And I went through dialectical behavior therapy, cognitive behavior therapy, self-assessment, mentalization, and it was like amazing experience. And then on the other end, at the same exact time, I'm this high-performing athlete. And when I was going through it, I was the guy who signed the biggest contract in NFL history. I signed a $50 million deal, the #1 contract ever done by a wide receiver. So that's why I'm all here, is because, you know, I'm searching for things that can not only help the person who may be impaired, but also the high-performing athlete or CEO or just a soccer dad or weekend warrior, you know? So for our foundation, those are the things that we're working on. Is one, the intangible, and that's raising awareness, which is most important. And the second thing is putting on-site behavioral healthcare services in our schools. So that's the nonprofit work that we do with Project 375.
Yeah, that's great. A few weeks ago, Brandon came out and we went and looked at and met with lots of people, amazing people who are using tech to support people with specific impairments. And it was just really exciting and exhilarating to see how much activity there is. And it's also like just, you know, all of you who are here at this conference. So
Yep.
what would you like to see in 5 years? Like where would you like to see this space, these technologies, and the mission that we have with Project 375? What would you like to see in 5 years? What would that look like?
Wow, I mean, things are moving so fast in this space. 5 years ago, when I sat in front of like 30 cameras and said, listen, the last 3 months, this is what I've been doing, this is what I've dealt with, and I want to put a face to it, and I want to start the conversation. I want to take it from a taboo topic to an everyday conversation. My exact words, you can Google it. Now it's an everyday conversation. I mean, this is at the forefront of our country. I just spoke in front of the U.S. Senate Finance Committee a couple weeks ago. The reason why that's so important, the last time that communities gathered was in 1999. 1999. I mean, the last piece of legislation JFK signed was the Mental Health Community Care Act, and that was in 1963. And that says that we're supposed to approach a physical ailment the same way we approach mental health. We're supposed to approach mental health ailment the same way we approach a physical health ailment, and no one's enforcing it. So these are exciting times. I just wanted to put that out there. But to answer that question, I would say it's important for us to continue to develop technologies that can help our community, that is accessible, affordable, and scalable, because that's what I set out to do, is to put a human being in every single school. And now I'm starting to realize that that's almost impossible. And the second thing is bringing the communities together. You know, we talk about galvanize the communities. It's really important that our professional feel comfortable with you entrepreneurs and also the investors, because a lot of people feel like they're being replaced. But that's not what I'm hearing when I'm out here. What I hear when I'm out here is people want to help bridge the gap and stand in the gap and connect the patient and the provider. So it's important for us to come together and work together. So I would love to see the communities come together, and I would love to see more people in this space, the space that we call TransTech, because we need it. I use things every single day like think up, and that's just words of affirmation. I know what that does for me on a daily basis. So to get to a point where there's thousands of options out there for our people, I think we'll see a better world and a healthier world.
Wow, yeah, I agree completely. One of the things that is going on too is that the TransTech 200 list is launching today, and so that, you know, is also a part of recognizing all of the people who are working in this space, so that we can encourage more, support them more, and like you said, you know, eventually have a society where anyone who needs help or anyone who wants to optimize and improve themselves and become their aspirational self can have the tools to support them in doing so. So that's great. Time for any questions? Do we have any questions?
First, I want to acknowledge that what you said about yourself and the work you want to do off the field, to me, this is being a real man in the world, and just not on Sunday afternoon. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
It's a little out of scope with the purpose of this talk, but because you said playing football is 80% mental, how are you personally dealing with the awareness of concussions? How are you trying to minimize it? And where do you think the future of contact sports is, given this is a risk?
Yeah, so awesome question, and thank you for that compliment. At the age of 6, I began playing football. That's all I knew. That was my only option. I remember the school books that we were using used to hold up our table. And in that book at the beginning, you guys may remember this, but the people who had that book before signed their name in it. And 20 years before I got that book was my aunt's name in there. And that shows where we were at. So all I knew was football. And it wasn't until a few years ago that I finally realized and had the information of how dangerous this sport is. So I will say that it is a dangerous sport. I think that it's an interesting time for us. I have a son, and I don't want my son to play ball, but I look at my work as being selfless, and I look at my life as giving it up for the cause these last few years, because we're in an interesting time right now where we talk about, whether it's mental health and or human performance. I set out a couple years ago to be the face of this, because I knew that there were entrepreneurs out there. I knew that there were nonprofits out there that were doing amazing things, and they needed someone or something to shed a light on it. So the next 2 or 3 years that I'll probably play, I want to dedicate my time to be a spokesman for whoever or whatever is doing it. And, to be honest with you, it's sad, but I may be opening myself up to more injury. But I will say that I've always played the game in a safe way. I will say that I've never really used my head. I've had one concussion. That was in 2010, before I really understood how severe head injuries were. And I also will say that I wouldn't change it for the world because of the things that it taught me. Things like teamwork and work ethic and dedication and toughness. So it's a double-edged sword.
How you doing? Thank you so much for being here, and I really appreciate the work that you're doing, and you, Sister Nicole. I work with a disadvantaged community in the Fillmore area. I'm trying to get the youngsters involved in this new jet age knowledge to show them that they can succeed. Because a lot of times, just because you can't read, that don't mean that you don't have no sense or you can't invent anything. I graduated from high school. I couldn't read here in San Francisco, but I've invented things to the cable cars. I've invented things. So if we could bring this knowledge to the community, I'm trying to I'm working with the Fillmore group, and we have a location that we can expose young people to this new knowledge. Would you be interested in maybe working with the community here in San Francisco to try to bring that about?
Yeah, this is my life's work, so definitely we can talk offline, and I'll be more than happy to help you guys wherever I can.
Okay, great.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
So I'll get your card when we're done.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Hi, my name is Erika Lee.
Hello.
Thanks for
Erika.
your really inspirational talk. I appreciated your vulnerability. And quick, actually, follow up when you just said, Ken, I was actually diagnosed, I was put in special ed when I was growing up, and I didn't have any knowledge. People didn't think I could read and speak, and English was my first language. And the best way to reach out to young people is to have a young person speak in front of them and connect with their audience. But to follow up, I had a question for you, Brandon, about what tips and strategies do you recommend for establishing daily habits? You mentioned your habits such as meditation. How do you find the discipline to do that every day or on a pretty chaotic schedule with you traveling or doing events?
Yeah.
I have trouble right now kind of doing that. And I've created,
Well, first I want to say that I was also diagnosed with SLD, slow learning disability, when I was younger. Said I couldn't read. It couldn't write any of that. So I'm also in that boat as well.
In 2011, I was actually diagnosed with borderline 2, and I had like a lot of medication that doctors gave to me, and within a year later, I actually was able to get out of that mindset, and today, I just take a lot of supplements, and my former boss, actually, John Astroff, taught me about mindset and meditation. He's here right there. And
great.
honestly, this kind of brain hacking and like neuroscience really, really has changed my life personally, and it's turned me from a college dropout to an entrepreneur with
That's
company
awesome.
virtual reality. So,
Thank you so much.
So
but
your
yeah, I was wondering,
question
your
on
tips about
daily
developing
Yeah.
the
mindset,
habits.
how to do that.
So routine, that's number one, healthy routine. So everyone's different. This thing presents itself in so many different ways. Just borderline personality disorder, it presents itself in over 265 different ways. So one of the things that we learn is there's certain tools and skills that may work for others who may be healthy, but not come naturally to us. So it's understanding what works for you, right? So I know writing works for me. I know reading works for me. Listening to classical music works for me. But more importantly, it's the routine. And as far as the discipline, where the discipline comes from, it's pretty cool now because the last 5 years I've really lived my life for others. It's not about the name on my jersey anymore. It's not about me and how much money I can make. It's really about the awareness that I can raise for my cause and also connecting people with the resources they may need. So when those moments come when I'm tired, those moments when I don't want to move forward anymore, those moments when the media is killing me and beating me up, calling me crazy, people don't understand what I'm doing, my teammates, they don't realize why it's important for me to come speak at a conference. Those are the times that I really lean on the why, So it's understanding your why, number one, and number two is having a healthy routine that fits you, that's customized for you. And you just gotta believe in it, you gotta live by it, and you just gotta stick to it. It's almost like your credo. You have to write it, put it on paper, and just stick to it. It's either gonna lead to something great, or it's gonna lead to something really bad. But as long as, there's a reward in that, you know what, you did it your way,
Yeah, thanks
Hopefully
so
it
much.
leads to something great.
Thank you. That's our last question. Thank
All right,
you.
thank you. Thank you guys.